We're now going to go ahead and take a look at the muscles of the chest and abdomen. Again, here we see an anterior view. This anterior view is of the chest, shoulder, and arm. First muscle to identify is a large superficial muscle of the chest known as the pectoralis major. Pectoralis major muscle here again is highlighted in purple. I will remove the highlighting so you can see the muscle fibers and orientation. So again, this is pectoralis major. The next muscle is the pectoralis minor. The pectoralis minor lies just deep to the pectoralis major muscle. So if you reflect the pectoralis major underneath, we see the pectoralis minor. Again, I'll remove the highlighting so that we can see that muscle in its entirety. The next muscle to identify is the serratus anterior muscle. And to see this muscle, we're going to take a look at the thorax. This muscle is got kind of a sawtooth shaped appearance. It attaches to many of the upper ribs, and we can see highlighted in purple here the serratus anterior. You can see the kind of sawtooth shaped pattern of this muscle. I'll go ahead and remove the highlight so that we can see this serratus anterior muscle on both sides. The next muscle to identify is the rectus abdominis muscle. The rectus abdominis muscle is the large vertically running anterior abdominal wall musculature. Rectus abdominis here is highlighted in purple. This muscle here is when someone has well-defined abdominal muscles. This is the muscles of what people commonly refer to as the six-pack. So again, rectus abdominis here. The linea alba. The linea alba is connective tissue that is going to connect the two sides of the rectus abdominis, or both the right and left portions of the rectus abdominis muscle. To see the linea alba, we're going to change views. Again, we're getting a good view of the abdomen here, and this connective tissue meeting point for both the left and right parts of the rectus abdominis muscle is known as the linea alba. I'll go ahead and remove the highlighting so that we can see the linea alba here. Okay, again, we can take a look at the rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscles, rectus abdominis here, and here we see very well that linea alba. The next muscle to identify is the external oblique muscle. The external oblique muscle is a superficial lateral abdominal wall muscle. We can see them bilaterally here or on both sides. They're colored in purple. Again, I'll remove the highlighting so that we can see the muscle fibers very clearly. You can see that there is a kind of an oblique pattern to the orientation of the external oblique muscle fibers. The next muscle to identify is the internal oblique. The internal oblique is going to lie just deep to the external oblique. So if we were to remove the external oblique muscles, lying underneath we would see the internal oblique muscles. So the externals have been removed and we see the internal oblique muscles highlighted in purple. I'm going to go ahead and remove that purple coloring and we can see the internal oblique muscle fiber direction very well. The fiber direction of the internal oblique runs kind of at a 90-degree angle to the external oblique muscle fiber direction. Just deep to the internal oblique, we have the deepest of the three layers of the lateral abdominal wall musculature, and that is the transverse abdominis. I'm going to go ahead here and look at the transverse abdominis. So the transverse abdominis, again highlighted in purple. Both the external and the internal oblique muscles have been removed to expose the transverse abdominis muscle. Again, I'll remove the highlight coloring so that we can see the fiber direction of the transverse abdominis is running kind of in this horizontal direction. The next two muscles to identify are intercostal muscles, the external and the internal intercostals. These muscles are very short muscles that lie in between ribs. So we're going to need to take a different look. Okay, to view the next structure in your word list, which is the intercostals, your external and internal intercostals, we have to change views. We are now going to take a look back at the thorax, and we're first going to look here at the external intercostal muscles. So the external intercostal muscles we can see here lying in between the ribs. They're colored here with this dark purple color. Again, we're going to remove that highlight, and you can see them very clearly up here, our external intercostals. The external intercostals, again, they're muscles that connect successive ribs. They're going to be found a little bit more, beginning a little bit more laterally on each rib, so at about maybe a third of the way along the length of the rib. As we're moving from anterior to posterior, we're going to see those external intercostals start to show up. Internal intercostals, we're going to see these intercostal muscles are going to be also connecting ribs as well, from one rib to another, and they're going to start directly as we move laterally off of the sternum. So let's go ahead and highlight the internal intercostals here, and you can see the internal intercostals colored in purple. If we go ahead and remove the purple color, we can see the internal intercostals. So again, external intercostals here, a little bit more laterally along the length of the rib. Internal intercostals are going to begin just lateral off of the lateral borders of the sternum. Final two muscles to identify, the psoas major and the diaphragm. To see the psoas major, we're going to need to go back into the abdomen, and the psoas major is a large hip flexor muscle that sits in the posterior abdominal wall. So we're taking a look here at the psoas major muscle. This muscle has attachment points on the lumbar vertebrae and your lower thoracic vertebrae, and comes down and attaches to your femur. We'll go ahead and remove that purple coloring so we can see the large posterior abdominal muscle called the psoas major. The last muscle to identify in this group is the diaphragm, and in order to see the diaphragm again, we're going to switch views and we're going to come back up to the thorax. The diaphragm is a large dome-shaped skeletal muscle on top of which our heart and our lungs sit. So here in this illustration, we see this purple muscle. This dome-shaped muscle is our diaphragm. This is our most important muscle of ventilation or breathing. So again, I'll go ahead and remove the purple coloring so that we can see this dome-shaped diaphragm muscle.